Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Generation Red, also known as the Husker Fan Hangout, which means you can jump on the stream with us. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, please, or in the near future, take a look in the comments. There is a link there where you can actually join the stream. I can also repost it if you need me to. But otherwise, Scott, we're just here to hang out and talk about a few things that have happened over the last few days, namely Big Ten Media Days and some of the quote-unquote drama that surrounded Big Ten Media Days. For me, it wasn't a whole lot of drama. It was just a lot of media people wanting drama because they want Scott Frost to dance around like a fucking monkey and say the things that they want him to say, and when he doesn't, they've got to make a freaking federal case out of it. Most notably, the paper with the initials OWH. That's all I need to say about that. Everybody else really didn't give six shits from Sunday about it. Most notably me, whether or not Frost made an opening statement or not. What did you think of that? I've watched it. It was uncomfortable, but you know what? What was he supposed to do? They're there. They're going to be early. They were going to go right away because the guys had to get the hell on a plane to come back for Husker Fan Day at the stadium and then start fall practice the next day. So I don't know what they were expecting from him. I mean, he's clearly on the hot seat. Why else would he have to take any time to make an opening statement about being on the hot seat or how he's going to be better as a coach so he's not on the hot seat next year? I mean, the dude couldn't win no matter what he said. So he decided, fuck it, I'm not saying anything. Right? At least that's my take.
Yep, that's pretty much what I was thinking. I watched it, and yeah, there was a little bit of an awkward silence at the beginning, but as I think you pointed out on Twitter, and my initial interpretation of the awkward silence was just waiting for the green light from the media personnel telling him, like, you're good to go. We've got mics, you know, they have to distribute them. They have to work with the press and all this stuff. So there was an awkward pause, and then you just went right into questions, which, I mean, I don't blame the guy. Like, you've said the same things for 4 years in a row. You're beating a dead horse if you say the same thing again. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. The Omaha World Herald or any of the media sources, no matter what he says, they're going to look at it with a microscope and they're going to use it to scrutinize him and say, you know, if he says something good, they're going to be like, oh, 3-9, you know, 2021 3-9 Scott Frost says that their team's going to be better this year. He said that last year. You know, if he says, oh, we suck, well, that's not a good idea. And if he doesn't say anything, well, that's not a good idea either. And honestly, out of those three options, I would say that saying nothing is probably the most wise thing to do, because what else is there to say? There's nothing I can say that's going to make anybody happy. There's nothing I can say that's going to make anybody more comfortable or confident or, you know, dismissive, or name the emotional response. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Frost says. So why not say nothing and just go right to the questions? Because that's what most people want to do anyway. They want to pick his brain apart. They want to ask him hard questions. They want to ask him, you know, soft questions. I don't care. He doesn't care is kind of is his look at it. You know, like, I'm just going to let the work speak for itself this year. That's what I assume his mindset was. And I'm sure Trev Alberts also instructed him, like, hey, if you don't want to say anything, I've got your back. Like, I would not be surprised if Trev was like, hey, man, you can say stuff if you want. And then I bet you Frost may have said in like a closed door meeting, like, honestly, man, I don't want to say anything. And he's probably like, you know, honestly, dude, if that's what you want to do, I'm all for it, because there's nothing you can say that's going to make anybody happy. There's nothing you're going to say that is going to alleviate concerns or stress or anything. So just, let's just say nothing. See what that does. And lo and behold, what did it do? Created a shitstorm anyway.
It was only the biggest story of day one of Big Ten Media Days was what Frost didn't say and what everybody wanted him to say, or what everybody speculated he should have said. Or, I mean, good heavens. I mean, you want to talk about a dude that's decided to create his own shitstorm around him, because, you know, let's be honest, he walks into his introductory press conference in 2018 and someone asks him the question about, you know, how are you going to adjust your system to fit the Big Ten? And he says, we hope the Big Ten is going to have to adjust themselves to us. he put a big target on his
The Big Ten was like,
chest. Okay, here we go. Yeah. And then he goes to Big Ten Media Days, and in one of his responses to a question in his first Big Ten Media Days was, somebody asked him about wins and losses, and he was like, well, everybody better get us now, because come year 2, and everybody picked us to win the Big Ten West in year 2, and then we completely crapped the bed on that deal. We get to Iowa with the opportunity to at least get to a bowl game, but we're damn sure we're going to win the Big Ten West. But yeah, it's just the poor guy. He came in with a lot of piss and vinegar. No ifs, ands, or buts. He probably stepped in it when he made that, hopefully the Big Ten will have to adjust to us comment, because I don't think he understood what it took to win in the Big Ten. And hey, I am more than willing to admit that I didn't either. I thought, oh yeah, bring that UCF crap down here, run circles around everybody because speed kills, right? I got that crap from a freaking USC fan during my solo live stream a couple months ago, talking about how, Lincoln Riley was going to come in here and run circles around the Big Ten because we're all slow and stupid. And I'm like, okay, bro, whatever. We thought that too when we had Pelini and Taylor Martinez. And next thing you know, that kid's on a bum ankle for the next 3 years because they beat the living daylights out of him the whole time he was in the Big Ten. So I don't know what Frost was supposed to do. I just don't, other than maybe he should have gone up there and just said, hey, you know what? We're here to do some business. We're here to let you guys hear what we have to say. And then we're getting on a freaking plane and we're going back and we're hanging out with our fans. Now that might've been a good thing for him to say, because he really could have said, I really don't care about you guys. I'm here to do an obligation. And then I'm going to go back and hang out with the people who actually pay my salary, not you guys. So anyway, I don't know if you got anything else on that topic or not.
No, I just thought it was interesting that when he went up to the podium in his, I guess, what you would consider his opening statement, which was, nope, let's just go right to questions. He just had like a big old smirk on his face. He just was like,
oh yeah.
It was almost like he knew what was about to happen. He's like, oh, there's going to be some journalist just
like, somebody's got to run around the room with the microphone, because there was only one dude. The Big Ten, the freaking conference that pays their schools over $50 million a year in revenue, and it's on the Big Ten network, and they can only hire one fucker with a microphone. Only one? That makes no sense. Why was Frost standing there for 30 seconds waiting for a question? It just makes no sense. But anyway,
yeah. Doesn't have
funny.
to. Doesn't have to make any sense. Yeah, nope. No. What you pointed out. I don't mean to get off track here, but whatever. We're just chatting.
No, go ahead. This is just a hangout. It doesn't matter.
I was listening to the Husker Podcast, and
yeah.
I believe that was it both Big Kurt and
oh, you're talking about the don't be messing with the Husker Cuzcast there. That's the Eyes on Big podcast, dude.
No, I know, but they had the Eyes on Big. I can't remember if they had both.
Oh, this was a while back. Yeah.
Yes, that was earlier. And one of the fascinating conversation points that they had that I think Big Kurt asked the Cuzcast was like, what did you guys think of going from the Big 12 to the Big 10 and the transitional period that was, and what was your like tone with that? Because from my experience being on Twitter, and this is Big Kurt speaking, he's like, from my experience on Twitter,
I think that was Jeffrey.
Jeffrey the Greek. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Sorry, Jeff.
And he just was like, yeah, from what I could tell from Husker fans as of late, the impression that they retroactively have initiated was that, oh yeah, we knew that going to the Big Ten, it was going to be tough. It was going to be hard. It was going to be rough. And he's like, but that's not what I remember seeing back when you guys joined the Big Ten. I remember it being like, oh God, like, here we go. We're going to go to a boring conference. Nothing exciting is going to happen. We're just going to win and dominate the Big Ten. And it was fun for me because I was listening to it and I was like, yeah, that was kind of my thought. That was my thought going into the Big
Right.
Ten, was that it's a boring conference. Anytime I turn on football on the
Yeah.
weekend when we were in the Big 12, is I wanted to watch Big 12, SEC, or even the Pac-12. Like I never cared about the Big Ten, aside from Michigan and Ohio State. I just didn't know anybody. Like I just assumed that they were a trash conference. And so it was just an interesting conversation point. Do you remember exactly, like reminisce? What were your initial thoughts when it was like, when we're going to the Big Ten? What were your thoughts?
At first, my initial thoughts were, good God, we're going to have to travel a lot further to go to some away games. That was my first thought. My second thought was, crap, Pelini has finally figured out almost right away how to defend the Big 12 and their offenses, which were, almost zero run games. So as long as you knew how to stop the run, you just had to play some decent zone defense, and you could stop the pass game. And watching the Big Ten, I knew there was some big dudes up front. I knew they could manhandle people, and it was boring football, but it was effective. And I was hopeful, but yet at the same time, I was a little bit skeptical as to whether or not we were going to be able to adapt. And then, 2011, we get to the Big Ten. We do pretty good. We go, 4-0? To open the season, I believe. And then we get to our first Big Ten game and we just get clocked by Russell Wilson and Wisconsin. And they just ran over us like a freight train. So I was worried. I really was worried getting to the Big Ten. And I was worried whether or not Pelini would figure out what he needed to do on defense to slow the Wisconsins and the Iowas of the world down. Now, we pretty much had our way with Iowa for the first 4 years in the league, which were the last 4 years of Pelini's tenure. He only lost once to Iowa. And we all know after the 2014 overtime win against Iowa, and Sean Eichhorst, the ginger dipshit, fires him the next day and stands up there and looks down his nose at all the media members and tells them the reason he fired him was he had to look at where Iowa was versus where Nebraska was. And we haven't won a game since against Iowa because those guys have never forgotten that. So joining the Big Ten for me was good for the school and in many ways bad for the football program, because I don't think we figured out how to win on a consistent basis yet. I think we're pretty close to being 500 in the Big Ten since 2011. I haven't done any research on that, but I think we're right about 500 in the Big Ten. And God almighty, you look at the Big Ten West when we joined versus the Big 12 North, we should, by all rights, be a little over 500, but we're not. So
no,
that's my thoughts on it.
And I think I'd already alluded to it earlier, but essentially my thought when we joined the Big Ten, and it was a lot of ignorance. I was still, in my early 20s, like maybe just turned 20 or something like that. And I just had this impression, like I look at the Big Ten and I'm like, well, you've got Indiana, you've got Illinois, you've got Iowa, you've got Minnesota, Purdue. You can start listing off all these teams. And at the time, I'd never seen those teams necessarily compete at, a top 10 level. So it was like, well, we should just go in there and run the house, like we should just dominate the Big Ten. Shouldn't be that difficult. And then it was very difficult. And when we hired Frost, I remember that feeling of like, I was humbled. I was very humbled on my impression of like what it takes to play in the Big Ten. And even though it was exciting to see what Frost did at UCF, it was very exciting. I just wasn't going to allow myself to think like, oh, he's just going to join the Big Ten. And it was very motivating when he said like, oh, I hope the Big Ten has to adjust to us. Like, there's that little bit of your inner self that's like, hell yeah. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Let's do that. Like, let's go, fuck some shit up and change the whole system. But practically speaking, it's like, yeah, that doesn't just happen. Like, it doesn't happen very easily. And here we are, we're going into year 5 with Frost, and the Big Ten hasn't needed to adjust even the slightest. They've just basically done the same thing over and over and over. And Frost has had to scratch his head each and every single season, trying to scrounge up wins, which have come very few and far between. And so at this point, it's like, well, we'll see what the season brings. But that honestly has got to be the most humbling thing for Husker Nation, is that, geez, like back to back, we thought joining the Big Ten for the most part was like, oh, come on, like this is dumb. Like this should be easy.
Right.
And then Frost joins, is like, oh, come on, this is dumb. We're going to kick everybody's ass. Like, why does everybody, so skeptical about it? Not the analysts. Of course, the analysts were like, oh, yeah, Frost, he's going to come in and he's going to change the whole Big Ten. I remember that. And it was really hard to go against that grain. But yeah, it's been an interesting, decade plus of experience. I don't know. It's been pain, nothing but pain. But anyway, that was a little bit of an offshoot of what we wanted to talk about. But I just thought I thought that was fun, and it was fun to reminisce on those thoughts of like what was I thinking at the time? Well, I wasn't thinking very clearly because god dang, like we struggled so hard. And I feel like we've only continued to struggle more as we've been in the Big Ten. But